Thor hammer.
Okay. Yeah, this one. Wait a minute.
Well, let's. If there's any more questions about Bluebird, like we talked about, the three things the Bluebirds need to survive: that's shelter, food, and water. We talked about the fact that the Bluebirds will have multiple nests throughout the year, and that the siblings will come and help mom and dad feed the second and third generations. Typically, you get two broods because they'll start in March, then again in March, April, again in May. But that third one is during the heat of the summer, so it's kind of, you may or may not see that third one. We talk about predators, competition for the bluebird houses. And I want to emphasize again, the important thing to do is to start. So go out in your yard. If it's in the morning, get a cup of coffee or some tea. Or if it's in the evening, get your glass of wine or some sweet tea. And just observe your different areas of your yard and see what's going on out there. It's like a whole little soap opera if you kind of watch it. I'll tell you about the hierarchy of the bath, the bird bath things. You know, the robins, they'll run other birds off, but the robins themselves will take turns. The bluebirds, they'll just kind of hang around the edge. So just get your bird baths out there, and you have to maintain them, because what you don't want to do is to create a bad neighborhood for your bluebirds. So if you don't maintain it, keep the house sparrows out, then you lose an opportunity to raise a good family of birds. And you want to monitor it to see, make sure what's going on is what you want to go on. Make sure there's no pests in there, no mice, chipmunks. And there's another thing I've read. If you have a nest that you haven't cleaned out, there's a fly called a blowfly that will take root in the nest, and when the bird makes a new nest on top of that, the blowfly will lay eggs, and those eggs will feast on the little, like blood suckers. They'll suck the blood from the nestling. It won't hurt the mom and the dad, but the little nestlings will, they'll suffer. So clean your nest out. Be a good neighbor. Yes, ma'am.
Make sure you wear masks and gloves. Remind people to use masks and gloves when they clean out their nest boxes.
That's important. Guilty, but I should, especially if you have a mouse, because any of it, the dust. The mice leave urine in the nest, and so you have that, germs from a mouse, or the blowfly has, those dust particles are not good for you. So have like I say, a mask, or get a long handle, or just open the door and hit it with a hose or whatever it is. So the thing is to keep it clean. And if you guys in the back, I've listed a couple of websites, so if you want to get more information about it, it's Cialis.org and National American Bluebird Society.org. They're excellent resources. You can spend hours just kind of looking through the different sites, especially on the Cialis site. I highly recommend it. It has little points that every question you have, like habitat, landscaping, how to feed them, how to take care of them, they have little bullet points, and you can read information about taking care of the bluebird boxes and stuff. So with that, I recommend, like I said, I recommend you put them where you can see them, because part of monitoring it, another part is just enjoying it. So I've got a bluebird house right down the back of my property, a little lower, and I've got a feeding station on my deck that I got from Wild Birds Unlimited. Speaking of Wild Birds Unlimited, it's a local company, a local franchise, but if you ever get the Hamilton County school booklet, anybody get that? That Hamilton County booklet, it costs $10. It's got all kind of coupons in it from different stores and locations. But in that booklet that costs $10 is a coupon to like 20% off. Do you remember? Yeah. 20% off at Wild Birds Unlimited. And additionally, Wild Birds Unlimited will give you a 2-pound bag of their blended birdseed. So for $10, you get 20% off of whatever you're going to order from Wild Birds. So, sir, when you go to Wild Birds and get that $60 squirrel proof feeder, you'll save $20 on it. But so, get a shopping list that you want to get at Wild Birds Unlimited. Go get one of those coupon books and get the discount and the seed. We talked about what to, feeding birds, and when the birds are nesting, when they have a nest, I like to give them some mealworms. Do you guys know what mealworms are? Okay, I'm gonna pass this around so you can look at it. But if you're a little squeamish about mealworms, don't drop my mealworms. These normally you get them. This is
I don't want
1,000.
those anywhere near my house.
Yeah, you do.
I used to find those in my grandmother's pantry.
Well, that's not good. In the flowers. Yeah.
Right?
But these, that normally you put them in the refrigerator, they're not that active. And I was talking to someone earlier about, you can get them like at Walmart. You can get them dried, or you can get the live ones from. I don't know where to get them besides Wild Birds. Maybe the barn will have some, but they prefer the live ones. But what I do is I have a little tray I got from Wild Birds. I put the live ones in the bottom of the tray, and I put the dry ones on top. So when the mealworms on the bottom move, it makes the dead ones on top look like they're alive. No, the tray has to be up.
Just like I remember.
If you put it on the ground, then everything, dog will eat them. So you want the birds to eat them.
So where do you put?
In a bird feeder.
You have to have a bird feeder. A bird feeder designed to house the mealworms, because the mealworms, it's a live organism. You have to have like an inch space to keep them from crawling out. Because once you take them out of the refrigerator, out of that compartment there, they're alive. So they'll warm up and they'll start moving and they'll migrate away from your feeder. So you don't want to pay for something that's just going to walk away. But I don't think the mealworms, they're not dangerous to humans. That they won't invade your house or anything like that. So yes.
Is there a certain time of year, like during the wintertime, is that really the time you want to feed those too, or you do it all year round?
Personally, I just feed during the nesting season.
Okay.
But if you put them out now, you will get bluebirds and other birds that like mealworms. They're quite expensive. How much were those? But they're quite expensive. We'll go through that in probably a week or two. So if I catch mom and I know that she's got chicks, because if you're checking your nest box, you hear the little chirpies. So we put the mealworms out while she's on the nest, and you'll see her coming from your bluebird house straight to your mealworms and back. And she'll typically get one, maybe two mealworms. She'll eat one or two, and she'll take 2 or 3 to the nest. And you'll see my dad will come, he'll get some and take them to the nest. So they'll make several trips. Well, let's talk about bluebird houses. Whether when you look for them, make sure that they have certain features. I mentioned the box, and open it so you can see it. So if you're buying houses off the internet, or some scouts have a community project or something, make sure you have something where you can view it. It should have a closure, somewhere to close it. Mine's just like a little piece of wire. That hole should be 1.5 inches, so you can take your power, something to measure it with. Yeah, you can. It should be almost let's see. This should be 1.5 inches on the inside diameter, just 1.5 inches hole. And if you use the Fosner bit or the hole saw, you can get 1.5 inches exactly. If it's a little bit bigger, that's no big deal. The house should have some ventilation on the side, and it does 2 things. It regulates the temperature in the house, and it keeps them dry, because they will get wet, but if you have some ventilation, it will dry out faster. Another thing, you want some ventilation, because if you have a closed-in box, you will get wasps from time to time. But if you got airflow, the paper wasp won't get in here. But if you get a wasp nest in there, clean it out just as soon as you can, because that nest will get, it'll be big as your hand before you know it, because this is a nice dry box. On the bottom of the box, it should have some drainage holes. And don't worry that these holes look pretty big, because when mom makes the nest will cover this much of the bottom of the box. So those holes will be covered up in nesting materials, and she'll protect the birds. But it allows them, those holes, if you got big enough holes, I've seen them, instead of the dog-eared corners like that, sometimes they just drill them like a series of like inch and a half inch or half inch or 3/8 inch holes just drilled randomly through, just allows some drainage. But it also allows some airflow. So you have airflow coming from the bottom up to the top. And the top, this hole here shouldn't, see like this one, this is an early design. This is the birdhouse people normally see, and it's nice and sealed up, got no ventilation. I had somebody living in here, but this is not the best living conditions. So you want some airflow, because airflow does two things. It keeps pests down, keeps gnats out and stuff like that.
You want to stop the air holes up during the winter or not?
No, because think about how a bird lives. They live in trees, they live in nests. You can. If I were in Wisconsin and Michigan, I'd say, yeah, stuff doesn't make it warmer, but our winters here are so mild. We have maybe 1 or 2 days of freezing weather. And that's maybe. Yes?
You said to put a hole in the bottom so that the mom can get out if somebody comes to get her?
What?
Where do you put it?
No, on the side.
On the side, okay. And do it up higher
Yeah, do
rather
it
than
up high.
lower? Okay.
Because if in a situation where the mom's on the nest and the house sparrow is attacking her, she'll stay on the nest because she can't get out through this one hole. But if she has an escape route, she'll come out and then start fighting from the outside.
So, but you wouldn't put it down lower because mine are usually down lower than the hole. Of course, that's for the nest.
That's right. Yeah, the nest, like I said, the nest will, if you notice, the nest will end up being about halfway in the box.
Yeah, okay.
So you put the hole up high.
Up higher, okay. All right.
If you have a secondary hole. And you don't put a perch on these houses. The bluebirds don't need a perch. Now the house sparrows, if they're going to attack you, the predators will, if they have a little perch on here, they'll use that to attack from. The bluebirds don't need a hole. I've seen bluebirds, like, see where the door is? I've seen a bluebird come from that distance and go straight in. It's just like, it's amazing to watch. Where'd he go? They go straight in, so they don't need a perch. And if you don't have one, like the bigger birds, like the starlings, the blackbirds, if they had a perch, then they can come in and harass your family. So don't provide a perch. And don't paint them with all-base paint. If you're going to paint the bluebird's house or a house to make it look nice, get some dilute latex paint, house paint. Yeah. Or I've read you can use some boiled linseed oil just to seal the outside of it. Or the house paint, the latex paint, is water-based, so you dilute it, just like make a wash to give it some light color. But I normally don't paint them. I just let them weather naturally because I can fix them if something deteriorates. Now these are made out of fence planks. The 6 foot, these type 6 foot dog-eared fence planks. And this is, I don't have any written plans, but you're welcome to take pictures of this. This is called a story pole. It shows everything you need to make the house. It doesn't tell you how, but from this you can cut the wood up to form a bluebird house. The only tricky part is the roof, which, there it is right here. So look on the side. The roof for my houses, the roof is cut out of 22.5, 22.5 inch depth, an angle. And that makes it so it sits nice and flush. But if you don't have woodworking equipment to make it happen, don't fret. Because the way I evolved, at first I didn't have that angle, so the roof just sat like that. But if you cut it, if you use these dimensions and cut this piece at a 22.5 inch angle up to 25 inch, then it makes it nice and tight. So for you woodworkers out there, that 25 inch. But my wife Bless her heart. She allowed me to buy a 12-inch sliding dual compound miter saw. I love it to death. 12-inch dual compound sliding miter saw. So where I was making this about 25 inches, that's close enough. Now I can get it at 22.5. It's a game changer. But
how many of those fence
What was your
planks do
reason
you use for one house?
hinging that at the bottom rather than the top?
hang on, I asked your question a second. Yes, sir?
How many of those fence planks would you use for one plank makes one house, or do you need two of those?
One plank makes one house. One plank makes one house, and you have about that much scrap. But it's kind of a fiddly process to get the door and the floor in. The sides and top are pretty quick, but you'll have to play with it. But each plank makes one house. But you have to be, when you're picking your wood, make sure you get one that doesn't have a lot of knots in it, because that's some wastage. So you may end up having to use two planks to get one. But a lot of this is rough lumber. I mean, this is not fine quality oak mahogany that you have on your kitchen table or your chiffero. So this wood is it's cupped, it's twisted, it's ugly, it's got knots in it, but it'll last. You know, this one's probably 10 years old, 15 years old. This one's probably about the same, but it's been modernized. So they'll last quite a while if you don't do anything to them except just clean them up. And what was your question, sir?
What was the reason for hinging that door at the top, the bottom rather than the top?
Well, as I looked at designs, I hinged it at the bottom so that I wouldn't disturb the nest. So the nest would be about here. The birds would be in it. So if you hinge it at the bottom, you can just look at it and just peek. You don't have to open it up. If you open it up, there's a chance that if the birds are almost ready to fledge, almost ready, they can come out too soon, and you have little babies on the ground. But you can pick them up, put them back in. But I do want to warn you. I saw some little. I think they came out of my neighbor Hines' house. The birds came out too soon. There was a little fledgling that was underground in the middle of the street. So, being a good bluebirder, I was going to pick the little fledgling up and put it back in a box. Well, Mama came and dive bombed me. So here I am. I've got this little nestling, and I'm ducking, trying to get back to the nest. So all I could do was just put it on a tree and let it sit there. Mom was still dive bombing me, so I thought, okay. She was doing what she didn't know that I was a good guy.
So how do you make the hinge? I mean, what is the hinge?
The hinge is just a screw. Let's see if I got this one. The hinge is just a screw that you drive into the edge of the board. So, and that just makes it hinge over. That makes it. You drive one in on each side, each corner.
And what's that hook on the side?
That hook on the side is this is called a insulation hanger, but it's a piece of wire that I cut and shaped to make that. But if that's beyond your skill level, you can, for a hinge, you can get pre-made little clasps, like a screen door holder, and just screw it to the front.
Keeps it closed.
Keeps it closed.
You could use a nail too.
Or you could use a nail. If you want to just put a nail in there, or a screw. If you put a nail in there, then drill through this at an angle so the nail will stay in there. Then you can pull the nail out, put it back in, so it won't. If you put it like flat, it could work its way out. If mom comes in here and is moving like that, it could work the nail out. Or if you put the nail in at an angle, like a was it a 10-pin, not a 10-pin nail, but a sheet.
Anything would be fine.
A finish nail.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look at that. Finish nail, yeah. Put a finish nail in. It doesn't have a big head on it. It just pops in there. You can hold it flat. But like I say, if you
You also need a gap in the floor in the front, right? So that if it hinges down, if you make that tight on the bottom, it wouldn't.
Right.
Wouldn't
the floor, and that's why I said this. If you make these, the door and the floor is the finicky part, Because like you mentioned, you have to have a gap there for that floor to pivot around. And that gap can be, you know, like a ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch. And having an extra gap, you may think, well, I don't want to have too big a gap on the floor because, you know, it could harm the birds. Don't worry about that gap because that's just extra ventilation. And like I say, the nest will be about that high. So that gap won't be a hindrance to the birds, to the bird nest. But the way I start making these, of course, you have the story pole, and all these are different pieces you need to make it. And there's a little bit of math here. Didn't you ever have a math teacher? I'm on here then. For the sides, if you follow the story pole, this is 9 1/4 on this side, 11 1/4 on this side, and 9 1/4 on that side. So if you put them top next to each other, when you cut it once, you'll end up with 2 pieces. Guess what angle that is right there? 22 1/2. Yeah, see, this is a math class. I like that. So, and the problem was I was getting the 22 1/2 here, but I couldn't make that happen on the roof until I got a 12-inch dual bevel sliding miter saw. It's a game changer. So you got that. This make that 22 1/2 degree angle for both your sides. Then as you construct it, what I have here is just the different parts of how you construct it. When you get through cutting everything up, you'll have the back, which is the mounting back. That's the mounting part of it. Then you'll have 2 sides at the appropriate angle. And then you have another back, which is this back mounts to the 2 sides to create the basic box. And then once you have that, then you mount the back to the box. And that
There's the ventilation.
and having the back, having this back. Where's my back? Having this back shorter than that 11 1/4 inch, having it shorter creates a ventilation hole in the back. And that hole is big enough for ventilation, but not too large to get, you know, competitors in there. So it's pretty safe. And then, so you notice you have like a double thickness on the back, which makes it easier to mount this to a pole. You can screw through here and mount it to a pole or fence. But, you know, and it makes it nice and thick, and this thickness also keeps the birdhouse from warping. If it was just one, I gave this design to a friend of mine who was also a woodworker, so he got rid of the shorter back, and he just had the one level all the way through, and he said his house warped quite a bit, and his door wouldn't open. I said, well, you need just a little bit more material. You try to get too fancy. But once you get the back and the sides on, then you add the top, and that creates the basic box. And the hole that I put here, I just do it just for looks now. I don't normally mount that, but you know, if all you have is a privacy fence to mount this on, you know, go for it. Just monitor it, make sure you don't have any predators in. But make sure if you do drill a hole in a birdhouse, make sure it's far enough down where this wood right here, you know, if you get too close to the end, this wood will split because of the weight. So make sure you got enough wood material here to support the bluebird hunt. So then, now you got the box. And then the next tricky part is to create a door. And the problem with the door is the wood we use all one dimension, but you have to trim the door down so that it will fit inside here. And then once you get the door in, then you can come in and once once you get the door in, you got a nice solid box. You can put your handle of some sort, either screw or nail. And once you got the door settled, then I generally drill it when I make the box like this. Or you can drill that hole, once you can put the door on here, get it positioned like you want, take it off, and then drill that hole. I normally drill a hole with it in the box. And then, see this one, this is like my test box, but you see I start out with a nice square piece, but this doesn't have enough drainage. So, you can either drill holes in this, multiple holes in this, or you can just dog ear that bottom. Dog ear in the bottom is quicker. You can drill holes in it. Either way, and like you mentioned, make sure that when you put the floor in there, that you make room for this door to pivot up. You can, I don't know if from back you can see that, but as I pivot this door, this bottom is too close, so that this bottom piece is kind of catching. So I would have to go in and trim that just a little bit.
How far down is the hole from the top of the board?
The hole from the top of the board, let me see if I have a rule.
Or is that important for bluebirds?
The hole is 6.5 inches from the bottom.
Oh, 6 feet.
Yeah. And that is important. Remember I told you that the mama will have the nest about halfway up? So if you put a hole real low, she doesn't have room to put a nest in there. So you put the hole up, and the hole does two things. It allows her room to make a nest and keeps the little guys in there, before they're ready to come out. So that just gives them some room to grow. And as they make additional nests, they will add more nesting material. So I have seen, like at the church where I am, I had some bluebird boxes that the nesting got up pretty high. It just depends on what material they use to make the nest. Some of it is flat like pine needles. Others is kind of fluffy like the cattail.
Is it 6.5 inches to the center or to the bottom of the hole?
6.5 inches to the bottom of the hole.
Okay.
And the hole itself is 1.5 inches. So if you follow my math, that's about 6.5 plus 1.5 inches. That's what, 8 inches, 9 inches?
7 1/4.
7 1/4. It's not
It's written there too.
What?
I can't take all the credit.
It's 7 1/4 to the center line, but it's 6.5 to the bottom of the hole. So you just drill your hole, make sure. Yes, sir.
2 questions. I've seen some designs in which they placed a little screen wire on the inside of that door supposedly to assist the young ones when they climb out. Have you found any significant advantage or to doing that?
The question is, he's seen some designs that have, when they make the nest box, they put, I think it's called hardware cloth. It's like screening material or hardware cloth on the inside, so the birds can crawl up easier. But that's not an issue if you use rough lumber like this. They can get in and out quite easily. But you don't want to use fiberglass screening because that fiberglass screening will deteriorate and it will clog up the nest or make it harder for the fledglings to get out. But they don't. Using this rough lumber like this, it's plenty rough enough for them to maneuver around. And in reality, I keep mentioning that the bird nest is about that high. So once the birds are big enough to fly away to fledge, when they come out of the nest, they get on the lip of the nest. They're right there at the hole, so they don't need that extra piece. And it's a good selling feature, but it's not necessary.
Where's the escape hatch for the bird to get out from the side or whatever?
Well, if you did that, it would just be on the side here. You just find another hole, another 1.5 inch hole. I've never done that for any of my bird houses. But I've not had any problems with house sparrows. But what I've read on the site was you could put an additional hole on the side. And some of the bluebird trails, they have a bluebird houses that are a little bigger, and they have 2 front holes. Another way to do it is to, instead of making a circular hole, instead of making a circular hole that's 1.5 inches wide, you know, to prevent, you can make an elongated hole that's 1.5 inches wide. So that gives mother bluebird a way to get out. And then once she gets out, like I say, you know, the battle begins anew. But I've seen some elongated holes here where she has room where she can get out. But if I was going to put another hole here for, you know, to allow her escape route, I would put it up high. That way, you know, she won't use it unless she needs it. And these birdhouses should last a long time. I don't know exactly how old these houses are, but they've got some age on them. Because this one was one of my original designs with the vent hole in it, but I had a little decorative piece here. But that was before I had the 12-inch sliding miter. It's quite painful to make that, so I said I'm not doing that. So that's when I settled on this design to make it quite easy.
Do you use ever like old barn pieces of wood from old barns?
If you had some of that, that'd be great. That'd make, because the old barn wood typically is oak, isn't it, Tom? You think?
Yeah.
It's probably oak or
Chestnut, maybe.
or chestnut. But that stuff has stood the test of time, and if you make a birdhouse out of it, it'll last another 20, 30 years. But it's even more, you know, if you get big pieces of barn, it's nice and flat, but it's not square. So it'd be a project to do, but it's doable, and it'd look real nice. In fact, if you got some,
Bring it out.
you know, I'm Carlton Mathis' Bluebirds, right?
You got a new best buddy there.
And you want to make sure on some of the colder climates, they insulate the roof. You want to make sure the roof is slanted to ward off the water. I did mention this will get, you know, because of how the ventilation, you know, the driving rains, this will get a little bit wet. But remember, the bluebirds, they evolved to learning how to build nests in the pine poles of farmers and fencing. You know, all those knots in those pine poles, the knots would fall out, and the bluebirds would nest in those holes. And that's what we're trying to replicate here, was that old fence pole that had a pine knot in it fell out, and bluebird took a nest, or a woodpecker pecked a hole in it, and the bluebird took over that bluebird hole. A bluebird took over the woodpecker hole.
So how does that box mount on that skinny pole?
That box mounts on that skinny pole. I love you. This is like segue, because I was just going to get to that. Before me, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a bucket of soil. There's one thing, if you're taking a Master's Gardener class, it's a bucket of soil. We don't call it dirt. Don't, you know, we have a phrase, don't treat your soil like dirt. So normally what I use is a bucket of dirt, you know, from church. But I didn't have that available to me, so I have a bucket of soil here.
All I got is dirt anytime you need it.
And I saw this on one of the websites, and I thought it was such a unique idea. They take you have your handouts. It's in your handouts, I call this, it's a three-quarter inch conduit. But I've done both. I've done 3/4 inch conduit, and I've done 1/2 inch conduit. And what you need is a piece of rebar. This is a 2-foot piece of rebar. It's 1.5 inch rebar. And the trick is to, you know, wherever you're going to have it in your yard, is to take your trusty hammer, get a level, and drive this rebar halfway into the ground. So if most of you live in an area like I do, you're going to drive it into the church, it's going to be there. But when you drive it in the ground, make sure you put a level on it, because you want it to be nice and plumb. So if you get this nice and straight and plumb, I thought I had a level for my show and tell. You drive it in the ground until it's nice and level and plumb, about halfway, and you can put a piece of tape on it to know how far to drive it in. But when you drive it in, just tap it down. If you're using a 1/2 inch conduit, be careful driving this in, because you can fatten out this end, or we call it mushroom that end out, and they won't fit over a 1/2 inch pole. That's why I recommended the 3/4 inch pole. But you just put this in your soil, wherever you want it in your yard. tap it about halfway in. Make sure it's nice and level. Then you take your conduit, and what you want to do is to, pre-drill a conduit. Just drill it so you have a couple of holes that match up with the back of your birdhouse. So you put 2 holes there, so you can put a screw through it that goes into the birdhouse. Make sure that screw is not too long where it goes into the cavity, but just long enough to get a grip on the birdhouse. So you got 2 holes pre-drilled. So then you take your pole, slide it over. Actually, that's got dirt in it. Soil. So you have the rebar pounded into the ground. You didn't mushroom the end of it, so you can take a 1/2-inch pole. If you mushroom the end of it, go back and get a 3/4-inch pole and just slide it over there. You're done. And you may want to take this and tap it just a little bit. And this pole is 5 feet long. So when you have your rebar in the ground, you put this over the rebar, you end up with a 5-foot pole. And so the house then just gets attached to the pole. And what I recommend is, put one in first, and then take your level and level it, and then put the second one in, make sure it's nice and level. If you get it a little wompy, that's fine. Mama won't care.
She'll just have to reorient it.
She has to reorient it. It'll mess with her feng shui a little bit, where she's going to put the sofa and all that. And she'll come out of the house and she'll look carved.
So you wouldn't use those little U-shaped bracket-like things?
You can use pipe hangers. I think they're called pipe hangers.
Yeah.
They go around here. But I wouldn't use it because those could slide down.
Maybe put one screw in.
Yeah, but if you just put a screw through the pipe, you're done. But if you wanted to use the pipe hangers, you're welcome to. If you get it tight enough to where it holds, because after a while that pipe hanger will rust and it won't go anywhere. But in these winds, and this pole will move some in the wind, so that's what I recommend. Just putting just a straight screw in there. It's easy and simple. Can't go wrong. But like I said, and one thing when you position your birdhouse, I want you to position it away from the southwest. You don't want the birdhouse facing southwest because in the middle of summer you have that harsh southwest sun coming in through baking the birds. So position it somewhere other than that direction. Mostly eastern. You want the warm morning sun. So if you position easternly or southeastern, that'd be good. That having said, it's a bit asterisk. If you have to place it that way, because that's the best way for you to see it, then do it. Because I want you to enjoy it. Mama will adjust. She'll come out fanning herself. He's got crooked and in the sun. And she'll fuss with her husband. Is this the best you can do? You just create a whole lot of problems. Face the correct orientation that you can.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
I don't have 100 yards of pasture. How far from like the wooded area should I bring it away if I am just going to put it in the yard?
Wait,
how far away from the trees should I
bring it away from trees where you can see where the sun pattern hits. If you look out in your yard and the sun comes up, you want that early morning sun. So if you can get it far enough to where it gets that early morning sun first, because by the time most of us gets up, I got a neighbor John. He's up with the chickens at 5:30 or whatever. But he'll send me texts at 4:30, 5 o'clock. He's out walking the dog, checking out the neighborhood. I said, John, what's going on at time of morning? He said, you wouldn't believe. I said, I won't see what's going on. but if you
tell him you'll have faith.
I got faith in him. Yeah, he gives me reports. But you want it so you can where the sun will come down. So if you get it far enough to where away from the trees where you can get some good sun, that'd be good. Mm-hmm. But then you have to position where you can see from it.
Face it away from me. Hello.
Don't do that.
I'll think about it.
Well, but still, even if you face it away from it, you can still see the activity, Mom. Because what you'll see is when they come scattered out, Dad will sit right here, and mom will come and go straight to the hole, and then they'll take turns. And then while mom's nesting on the nest, you'll notice you won't see her that much, but dad will be bringing her food constantly. So, yes, sir.
If you put more than one in your yard, how far apart do they have to be?
Well, I say mine and my yard are 80 to 90 feet apart. You know, that works fine for me, but you may or may not get, if you have multiple nest boxes, you may not get a family in each one of them, you know, because they are sort of